Welcome to our podcast. This is Friends on Fire.
I'm Mike. I'm a lifelong devotee of financial independence. I even wrote a book about it.
And I'm Maggie, a newer convert, but just as passionate, especially on the intersection of minimalism and financial independence.
We're one and the same.
We are two like-minded friends who believe that talking about money with your friends and family opens the door to financial well-being.
The Friends on Fire podcast is about dispelling myths, building financial acumen, and sharing your financial independence journey with the people you care about.
This is Friends on Fire. Hey, Maggie.
Hey, Mike. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I know you're really excited for this discussion today.
I am very excited. We're going to be talking about pursuing your passions, and it's kind of funny timing because one of my passions is like DIY and making stuff and building and fixing things. Might be weird to describe that as a passion, but it definitely is one of mine. And I got you. That's fair. I had a classic home DIY and the project spirals out of control. So one of my toilet paper holders in my downstairs bathroom was loose. Like the anchors keep coming out of the drywall. And as much as I try to like fix it, it's just whatever. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to cut out a piece of drywall. I'm going to put in a little piece of wood support behind it and make it super solid. This is never going to happen again. I love drywall. It's one of my favorite activities. So I cut out a very nice piece.
You're going to be able to rip toilet paper off there.
Yeah. You'll be able to stand on this thing. It'll be so strong.
It's going to be so strong.
So I cut out this piece of drywall and put this board in. It's really nice. I have pocket hole screws.
Cut the drywall out?
Yeah, I cut the drywall out. I put in...
I thought you were going to do this on top of the drywall.
No, put it behind.
It's legit.
I had pocket hole screws that I connected into the studs behind the drywall and then put the drywall back in and reattached it, and it was great. And the thing about drywall is that if what you are then mudding over is at a lower level, lower depth than the surrounding wall, it's easy to put it on. You put it on a couple layers, it's smooth, you do a little sanding, and then you're done. But when there are pieces that are above the drywall around the edges, you need to what's called a feather it. And this could be like 1 or 2 or 3 feet of feathering so that you don't see a bump.
Hey, I think we just lost like half of our listener base as you started talking about feathering drywall. But keep going.
Well,
sounds like a Maggie story. Keep going.
Yeah. So give me my time.
So now you're feathering the drywall.
Yeah. So I have to, because of the way the drywall went back on, I had to do some feathering. And so what was a 6-inch square turned into this 3-foot patch of mud that like took me a little while to smooth down, but then it's perfect and it's like really smooth and I like it. Then I realized that I didn't have the paint color anymore. And so I had to discuss with my wife what color we were going to paint these walls with. We picked a color that we have throughout the house, but then I realized I was out of that paint color. So I had to go buy paint along with some new rollers. And then I had to go and tape.
Oh, you could have just color matched that little section.
No. Like I was out.
Cut the drywall out.
Well, I didn't realize at the time that I was out of the paint. I thought I had the paint.
I know.
So I go to Home Depot, pick up some paint. I come back, I repaint the whole thing. It's great. But in doing so, I also had to pull the vanity away from the wall, the paint behind it, and like touch up those edges. And the drain, as I was pulling the drain off, like it was old and it snapped. And so I additionally had to do my own like DIY plumbing to get the drain working again. So I wanted to just make this toilet paper holder a little bit more sturdier. And it turned into a drywall / repainting / plumbing project that took me 3 days in my bathroom.
I love it. That sounds like most home improvement projects.
But the thing was, I had so much fun. I was a little like embarrassed and frustrated with myself, but then also really satisfied that I could do all this extra work.
Yeah, I like it. On a mildly related topic, I went to Home Depot last night for the first time in, I can't think how long. There was a time in my life when I would go to Home Depot every weekend and we were always doing DIY projects. And then we did a big house remodel, didn't have as much stuff to do. And I just don't go to Home Depot and I don't shop that much. And there's just like a bunch of things we needed. We broke this light in a closet and just a bunch of things. And I spent like $160 at Home Depot last night.
Yeah.
And I was proud of myself. First off, I only bought what was on my list, but there were a lot of things on the list. But I just realized how little I actually go out shopping for stuff like that in a good way, right? Like I don't need a lot of things. And I was kind of like annoyed that I was having to spend so much, but I was like, you know what? I haven't done this in years. So I'm going to be okay with it.
Yeah. Home Depot will get you every time.
Yeah, I didn't realize I could have run into you at Home Depot.
So today's episode is about pursuing your passions. And we got a great voicemail, which kicked off this topic, and want to play it for you right now.
Hi, I was calling to get your opinion on a topic. I have a decently demanding corporate job and 2 young children, but I have a dream of someday owning my own winery. So this could be done in a lot of different ways, like purchasing one or starting one from the ground up, or a combination of those two things. So my question to you guys is, how did the two of you start pursuing your dreams, your after retirement dreams, or things that you want to do kind of outside of your corporate life, while you still have all of those responsibilities of work and children, and honestly not a lot of free bandwidth? Curious your thoughts on that. Thanks, and love your show. Bye.
I really like this because while we talk about money, it's not really about money. Money is a tool to get you to a certain place in life, to give you flexibilities and freedoms, but this is really about being happy, living a fulfilling life. Money just helps you get there.
So we talk about this a lot. The reason we do this whole FIRE thing, and that we're so passionate about it, is not because we want to do nothing. It's because we want to spend more time on the things that we're passionate about. And like Mike said, the money is what helps us get there. It's not about the money. It's about the freedom to be able to pursue your passions.
So what are you passionate about, Maggie?
Gosh, I'm passionate about a lot of things. And it, can vary over time of what I I'm into at one time in my life or another.
Can you give us like the top 30 passions?
Top 30? Okay, sure. I like how you've quit even trying to get like the top 3 from me. You give me a top 30. I'm passionate about minimalism. I love organizing things. I used to want to be like a professional organizer when I was a kid. Some people wanted to grow up to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I was like, nope, I want to be a professional organizer and an architect. I'm super passionate around like Buddhism. I love helping people. I love leadership and inspiring better ways to do things and solving problems. And I mean, even just the funny story you were telling about your bathroom, Mike, like I'm the same way as you. Like it's as much as you're sort of annoyed at all these issues you're running into, I love being able to solve them. And I love, solving problems. I like taking complicated things and finding solutions to them. Sounds like lame. Like I actually love making PowerPoint decks. A lot of people hate it at work. I love it. I love to like put a story together.
That is lame.
In a beautiful way. I love reading. I love listening to podcasts on all sorts of topics, from finance to all sorts of stuff. I like to watch TV sometimes. I consider that. I don't know if you can call that a passion, but it's a way I like to unwind. I like to do stuff outdoors. I like to run. I love to travel. I love this podcast. I'm not sure if I used all 30 of mine, but I got a lot of passions. And I have a lot of things I want to be future passions. Like I really want to garden, but that feels like a lot of work and something I need to learn more about. But I've got dreams of areas that I want to do more in and learn more about also.
Where you want to develop more passions.
Yes, where I want to develop more passions. What are your passions, Mike?
Thank you for keeping that list relatively short. I think I'm sort of similar. So I'm passionate about travel, passionate about videography and photography. As I mentioned, love building and creating things. I really like finance. I like the world of finance. I like personal finance. I'm extremely passionate about helping people with their personal finances. It is why I'm doing this podcast with you. Yeah,
it's how we became friends. It's why you kept answering all my incessant questions.
That's right.
You actually liked it.
And why I sat down for like a year and wrote a book about it. It was a grueling process, but I am passionate about this topic and something that I really enjoy doing with my time. So like you, I just have a bunch of diverse passions that I pursue in my life. And I think it's safe to say we're both passionate about being parents and creating rewarding lives for our families.
Oh, I feel terrible. I forgot to mention that. But it is something I'm very passionate about, how I raise my children. And
yeah, but I get the points for saying it. You now sound like a terrible parent.
I thought it was just like assumed, I thought it was assumed that was something I'm passionate about.
Nope, you got to state it. So apparently you don't love the kids,
bonus
but I do.
Bonus points for you, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Now, I think what you'll notice about our passions is that these are not super lofty I'm passionate about saving the world, or I'm passionate about stopping war. Like, I think some people get confused.
Now that you mention it, I am also passionate about saving the world, Mike. But keep going.
All right. Well, I'm trying to differentiate
like
between what some people might consider just like a hobby and what society might tell us are like worthwhile passions. And you don't have to structure your passions in such a way that fits somebody else's idea of it. It's whatever you love doing with your time that is fulfilling.
Yeah, it could be as simple as you really enjoy reading.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is a passion and something you want to spend more time on. It does not have to be that you want to save, an entire continent and feed every hungry child on this earth, though that also is a very, worthy passion and area to focus on.
Yes, if that is your passion, more power to you. We need a lot of people doing that. So please pursue that. For those people who don't think they have passions, maybe they really do and they just don't realize it, but maybe they don't. And that's okay. But it should be an objective to go and find those things, because having a passion is what gives you motivation to do difficult things. And as it relates to money, it is what can motivate you to save more money than you're currently doing and pursue different opportunities that will get you closer to financial independence. You need that motivation.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mike. I've heard people say to me all the time, related to the topic of early retirement or just in general related to, different life topics, say that, they don't know how they would spend their retirement, or they're not sure what they would do with their free time. And I'm the opposite. I have so many things I want to do with my free time and no free time that I really often think, I could keep myself busy for, months or years before I would get bored. And I know I would get into things. Like I know a lot of my passions would turn into longer term projects, and whether they made money or not would turn into fulfilling things that I could spend my time on that help other people and that I find enjoyment in. My point on that is just reinforcing your point of, though people like myself and Mike could rattle off, 50 different passions we have, I think Mike's point is so important, which was the idea that it's okay if you're not sure what your passions are, but it is a worthwhile investment to spend some time getting in touch with what they are, because it's likely that everybody has passions and they don't need to be a certain size or shape or, whatever. Everybody's could be different. And it's a very worthwhile exercise to spend time getting in touch with what really does make you happy and what drives you.
A few additional thoughts about passions. And I dedicated almost an entire section of my book to this idea about purpose and passion. I think we are led to believe that people discover their passions when they're children, and then it fulfills them until their death. And that's super rare. Most people don't find their passions until very late in life or ever. And so part of this whole journey, and something that you should really focus on, is make it a deliberate part of your life to pursue activities that you think you might be interested in and that could possibly become passions for you. Go and take classes at a local art studio. Go and do different outdoor activities. Just try something once or twice. If you don't like it, that's fine. It was a good experience, but you may discover that you love it and you're passionate about it. But if you are not open to the idea of discovering your passion, it's really unlikely that you're ever going to find it.
And Mike, this podcast is actually a good example of that, in the sense that, this was something that we were interested in, and a topic, like you said earlier, that you love talking to people about personal finance and helping people with their finances. And so we thought this would be fun, but we really didn't know if it would be until we tried it. And so for us, this was a bit of an experiment to say, you know what, if we started doing it and we were like, you know what, this is kind of a drag and like, we're not enjoying it and nobody's listening, or, whatever it might be, or nobody's engaging, then we might have said, you know what, we don't actually like this, or we just don't know until we try it, to your point. And so I think there's a lot to be said for just giving things a try. And this podcast is a great example of that. And then, a few other thoughts. I once had someone ask me this phrase in a leadership class, probably a decade ago, of, do you live to work or do you work to live? And I'm not, embarrassed to admit that back then, this was over 10 years ago, I probably answered and definitely acted in my day-to-day life as if I lived to work. I was very focused on work. I was very focused on my career. I did not have kids yet, but I was focused on work, to the detriment of the relationships around me, and did not give as much to my friends or family because I gave so much to work. That phrase always stuck with me because I would say I work to live now, right? And I remember even at the time, just like I said, that phrase stuck with me because it was like, I don't know that I want to live to work, but I didn't know any better. And I had, a little bit of like confused ideals at the times or out of priority ideals at the time. And, I just didn't have as much life perspective and wisdom. I remember Mark Horseman talking about this when we interviewed him, Mike, on an earlier episode. Just the idea of like, you think you know so much at certain ages and you really don't know until you get a decade down the line or another decade down the line, how little you might have known back then. And so that's one thing that just always stuck with me. And the other thing is, it doesn't mean that you don't enjoy your job if you say you work to live, right? Like it means to me that you recognize the role and the place that your job has in your life and that it doesn't rule your life. It is a utility in your life that you put an investment into. You can still have passion in what you do. You can still enjoy it. And you can still take pride in doing a good job and serving others and everything else that might matter to you in your individual job and career. But it doesn't have to be the thing that drives you. And I think the other thing is just, spending time on figuring out like what really makes you happy. So Mike once recommended a book to me called Designing Your Life, and it's written by two professors at Stanford. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. And it has a mind mapping exercise in it. And you go through this really quick exercise of kind of like writing down all these things that give you energy versus take your energy, and like, and what makes you happy, and then what that makes you think of. And when you think of this, then what do you go to next? And what does that make you think of? And I ended up with this mind map of all these different things that made me happy. And it was really amazing. It was a very powerful exercise to me, and it made me start to really come to terms with and realize and appreciate like what makes me happy, which is often tied to what your passions are. So I think to a lot of the points we've made earlier, just, putting the investment to really think through like what does make you happy and what do you want more of in your life versus what you want less of, and then starting to kind of design your life around that.
And so now that we've both very thoroughly shared our thoughts on passions, let's go back to the voicemail and the listener who wants to open up a winery and pursue that passion in her life. The first decision that we recommend she makes is pick between one of the following three options. She needs to decide what role that passion is going to play in her life as it relates to income. The first is, does she want it to be something that she does while also working full-time? So this is to say she will generate little to no money doing this passion, and she will still need to work or still wants to work full-time.
And that could be like a passion project.
Exactly.
Right?
That well said.
Similar to this
Passion
podcast.
project. Yes, this podcast is a passion project. The second is, do you want to replace some of your income with this passion? So do you have a lot of savings and you don't need to work full time, but you need some money or want to earn some money? And then the last one is, do you want to replace all of your income, or do you want this to be like your sole source of income? These are going to result in very different approaches, longer term, to how you pursue this passion. But it's best to kind of figure out now what it is you're trying to achieve, because the immediate short-term steps you're going to need to take are going to be dependent on what role you want this passion to serve as it relates to money.
Yeah, I think, two thoughts on that, Mike. One, well, I got like 8 thoughts, but
yeah, let's limit it to 2 thoughts.
First, I got 3 all of a sudden, but one is I like the structure of those questions, right? Of just kind of how specific it is to ask yourself those specific questions. The other is, while you're asking yourself those questions, one thing that I think is an important note for many people to understand is that it's okay if your day job, quote, your day job, or what you make your primary money doing isn't what you're incredibly passionate about, right? It doesn't, I think some people often are on this quest to find the career that fulfills everything they want in life and is aligned to every passion they have in life. And I remember having conversations, this was actually with a family member years ago, saying, you know, like they were always searching for something in their career. And I was like, you know, you might just have a job, right? It's okay. Like if this job allows you to provide for your family and gives you the time and flexibility to also pursue your passions on the side, then maybe that's actually okay and a good thing. And I, you know, a one example could be even there's people who I know are teachers, and it may not be that that's what they're most passionate about, but that gives them the flexibility to travel over the summer and to have more flexibility and freedom in their life in general. And that's okay, right? And that's just one of many, many jobs that you could have. But I just think it's important for people to understand that your day-to-day job and how you make income does not necessarily have to be what you're most passionate about in life. That's a personal choice. And who knows what my last point was? Can't remember it.
I'm not sure what most of your points were, but the one point that I think is very good, if you have a job that is just a quote unquote job, it doesn't mean that it's the right decision to quit and go do something that you're really passionate about because you think that's what the universe is telling you to do. So we hear a lot of inspirational stories all the time about people who quit their 9-to-5 job and now live in the mountains being a sheep herder or whatever they're super passionate about. And we're like, wow, that's awesome. Like that's very bold. I'm inspired by what they did. If you don't love your job, you don't have to go to the other extreme. There are ways that you can dip your toe into this. And this kind of brings us to the next point, and something that was a big part of that book that I recommended to you, Maggie, Designing Your Life. And it's about piloting these ideas and testing it out in a controlled environment, not jumping in and letting go of everything else. Because if it doesn't work out, you need to have a way back.
It's what we were talking about earlier on saying this podcast was a pilot for us, right? We wanted to see if we like it.
Yeah.
On your sort of 3 points, when you talk about piloting it too, it's structured as those 3 options are, right? Of do you want this to be an activity you can do while also working? Do you want it to replace some of your income, or do you want it to replace all of your income and become a new job? It doesn't have to be that you choose one of those and stick with it forever, right? It could be that, like you said, it's an agile process. You're learning along the way. So you pilot one and realize that's not the right thing, and then you try a different one. But I think going in there with a hypothesis is where you kind of have to start.
Yeah. So let's give some specific examples for this winery passion. This is something that I think it's safe to say is a little bit more difficult to pilot than others. It's not like, say, art or building things where you can like get the tools and do these things yourself. You really need to be very deliberate about how you test out the world of winemaking. But this is absolutely the first step, because it will likely take a lot of money, a lot of time, and you want to make sure that you're finding the right part of the wine business that is what you are truly passionate about. So let's talk about a few ideas. I think the first thing, and this would be a fun activity, is go visit as many as you can. Go take tours of all of them. Go to the wine tasting rooms. Maggie, I can see your face lighting up thinking about all the drinking.
I don't even like wine. So my face was lighting up because I have so many creative ideas of how I would pilot this if I wanted to own a winery. Like I would literally email tons of wineries and say, hey, I'm going to book a vacation for a week. I want to come to your winery. I'm interested in opening a winery. Can I like apprentice and like work along? I will work for free for you. I'm going to pay to stay at your winery, and I will work for free for you for the week to just like shadow you and be your apprentice and do any grunt work you want me to do and help and learn about your business, because I want to know if this is something that I want to do. And I think there would be so many people that would take you. Some people might not, but a lot of like local places who had the same dream that you had one time, they can remember that, I think would take you up on it and would like let you, wear their shoes for a week.
Yeah. So a couple things, I think passion recognizes passion. And so if you were to email like a very large commercial manufacturer of wine, you're going to get some person there's like whatever. Yeah. But for most people who are small business wineries, they would have started in the same way. And so they would love to help you out. And in general, Everybody loves to talk about themselves. They love to talk about their work. I mean, Maggie, if somebody came up to you and they were like, wow, you looked really organized today. Can you share your thoughts? You'd be like, oh my God, do you have 5 hours free?
I'd be like, somebody once asked me about this podcast, and I talked their ear off and was telling them like everything I thought it would take to launch a podcast.
Exactly.
And then I think they regretted ever asking.
So don't be shy about requesting the time or opportunity of people who are in this industry or any industry, because you are likely to get a far more positive reaction than you might think.
And don't be beat down when you get some no's, right? You may need to ask 20 people. You may only get 5 yeses. You may get 15 no's. Like, that's life. So like shoot for the stars and like you'll get a few.
The second item that we'd recommend is join one or many professional groups or communities. These can be in person. I mean, when in-person stuff happens again.
Whenever that happens again.
Or online communities that are discussion boards that are happening. But the more people you interact with who are also passionate, the more ideas will be generated within yourself. And the more you'll recognize what element of that area you are most passionate about.
There are so many Facebook groups on every topic now that you can go and search for and then apply to become a member of. Within an hour, you could be in a Facebook group about people that own wineries or are looking to open wineries, and then, put up a chat. You'd have, hundreds of responses within a couple hours.
And Maggie, you and I are seeing this network benefit with this podcast because there is a very strong community in the personal finance space, and we are interviewing them. They're interviewing us. We're talking to them over email and over Instagram. And it's a lot of fun to interact with people who are passionate, and we are learning things. Maybe they're learning things from us, but regardless, it's fun to interact with these people.
Yeah, it's fun to interact with like-minded people. It's incredibly inspiring. And so when you start to hook into a community of people who are also passionate about, in this case, opening a winery, it helps to fuel your passion and fuel your interest too. Yeah. Or you may start realizing, you know what? I'm not nearly as passionate as all these people, and I'm never going to work as hard as they're going to. You know what I mean? Like, this is why you're piloting it, is to find this kind of stuff out. Because if you get into these and you're like, oh my God, this is so boring, I don't want to talk about this, it may not be the right thing for you, right? Versus if you get into it and are like, I love this, keep doing more of it.
That's a great point. So this listener could start down this path, realize she doesn't want to open a winery, but wants to open up a wine tasting restaurant. And that's the part that she's really passionate about. But she would not have known that if she didn't go and interact with people and discover it.
Back to the example of just getting creative about things. I can't remember if this was in the Designing Your Life book or some other book I read, but this lady was talking about how her dream was to own like a coffee shop in a small town. And she went and worked at one for a week, like as a waitress, like worked at one, like at the, ground level. And she hated it. And she got a sense of what it was like to run the business and just all the different aspects of it. And she very quickly was like, never mind, I do not have that dream anymore. And it's helpful, right? You got to pilot this stuff. Like, it doesn't, you could have 10 different things that you've always been curious about or passionate about. And, it might be the process of elimination. And don't be afraid to go do something crazy, like get a job there for 2 weeks, right? Especially if you're in a situation where you're out of work and you have that, flexibility to go do something.
And then don't be upset with yourself if you put a significant amount of time towards this and you realize you don't like it. That is far better than quitting your job and moving states and leaving everything behind and then realizing you don't like it.
Exactly.
All right, so let's talk about the financial aspect of this, because if this passion becomes something that turns into a job, you're going to need to have a solid plan for it. So the first thing is, if you decide that you want to replace a good portion of your income or all of your income, you are going to need a rock solid business plan. And you're going to also need to accept that there's going to be a lot of pressure that accompanies it. If you are leaving a steady paycheck behind for an entrepreneurial business, you need to be really clear about what position you're serving in the market, how and where your revenue is going to come in, what your expenses are going to look like, who you are going to need to employ to help you. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and you can do this planning prior to you jumping in full time. So we call it a business plan. So make sure that you are spending a lot of time on this before you make the leap.
Yeah. And then I think the other side of that, Mike, is if you just want to replace some of your income, this is where things get a little bit easier and start to align with a lot of different types of, fire terms that are coming out around like coast fire and lean fire and other things. I think the idea is that it's not all or nothing, right? So if you just want to replace some of your income or need a smaller amount to live off of, there's certainly ways that are very tied to the beliefs of the fire community that you can create that situation in your life. And either you have it now or you can work towards it in the future, which is around, making sure that you have enough in savings, getting to a point where you could live off of, the dividends and interest from your savings, or live off, part of it, or you have one spouse that's working and you're working less, or at a point where you can go a little while without making as much money as you perhaps had been. And then you have some breathing room, a bit of an emergency fund or whatever you want to call it, to be able to explore and kind of support whatever this idea is that you may have in a less high pressure environment, if you will. One of the things that many people in the fire community are focused on is the idea of living with less or living below our means to be able to have a very high savings rate to provide more freedom and flexibility in the future. And that freedom and flexibility, as we've said a number of times, is often to be able to pursue your passions, right? So, and I just want to kind of say that to round this conversation back together for everyone, Mike. And also because I think there's a lot of people who are listening, some people who may be a part of the fire community and consider themselves of that mindset. And then there's a lot of other people who may not be, right? They may just be looking for ways to improve their personal finances, improve their lifestyle, improve their happiness, et cetera. And I think that's where it's important to sort of like reinforce some of the ideals that come from the fire community, because they're so tied to being able to put yourself in a position to have more freedom and flexibility to pursue your passions so you can be happier in life.
Yeah, that's a great point. And while we spent the latter half of the show talking about generating income with your passion, most people are never going to do that. And that's fine. Like, you can have passions all of your life that cost money, don't make money. And so the idea is that you can pursue your passions and have a fulfilling life and a happy life in a wide range of ways. And that is really what we are proponents of. Like, pursue those things that make you happy in the way that makes you the happiest.
Yeah. Yeah. I met a guy in Florida earlier this summer that recently purchased an ice cream shop and was running the ice cream shop. And he had moved, I can't remember what he did before, but he had like an office corporate job. And he and his wife had decided to kind of like move down to Florida. They were in a financial position to be able to do it. She was still going to keep working, but they could basically just live off of her salary and had gotten to that point. And he was kind of joking, but he was serious, because I was asking him like how things had been through COVID. He was like, basically, my goal is like, this gives me something to do every day. I enjoy it. Makes me happy. I like interacting with people. I love seeing like kids' happy faces when they come and get ice cream. And he was like, my goal is to not lose money. Like, that's my one goal, is like, I don't really have to make a lot of money doing this. I just can't, like, my agreement with my wife was I just can't lose money doing this.
That's awesome.
And I kind of liked it. Some people might criticize him for that. And I'm sure he would prefer to make a profit. But I get his point of him saying like, this entertains me. It keeps me happy. I enjoy it. And as long as I'm not losing money at it, it works for my family because of the way we've lived our lives up until now. And he was probably, 55, 60. And he was a pleasure. And we had a, great chat. And he was like so nice to my kid. You could just tell he was happy. He was like relaxed and happy and like spent a lot of time with the kids. And it was a great example of pursuing your passions.
So let's wrap this up with our 3 key takeaways.
Number 1, a truly rewarding life is often filled with passions. It could be one passion. It could be 30 passions like I shared earlier. But it's passions, things that make you happy and that you get excited by and that give you energy versus zap your energy.
And as it relates to fire and this podcast, passions give you a reason to be better with money. You can live out your passions more quickly or more fully. So we talk about the why a lot on this show. Your passions can be your why.
And to, round this whole discussion out like we were doing earlier, number 3 is save your money and invest it, live below your means, all the things we're constantly talking about, so that you can create an environment where you don't need to win or lose to enjoy your passions, right? It's not that you have to start a business for your passion to win or lose. If you're able to make something a, thriving commercial success, that's awesome. But if you're not, you have the flexibility and freedom to keep them as passions that are just for you and that aren't about making money or, turning a profit. And that is possible. And I think that's something that we really want people to understand is you can choose to live your life in a certain way to where you have the freedom and flexibility to pursue your passions and not have to worry about money.
So I hope this episode was helpful to everybody, but specifically to our caller. And I would like to request that if you start your winery, we would love to get some wine. And you could put our stickers on the bottle. Maybe you could name Yeah, you can name a bottle, like a type of wine.
Like a line, what do you call it? It's like when you make a round, whatever of beer. And
I don't know. I get my wine from Trader Joe's for $2. I'm not really sure how the
they don't have
works.
Special runs. Yeah.
Yeah, they just call it like Trader Joe's
just
red
an idea.
wine.
If you wanted to name one of your blends after Friends on Fire, we'd love that. We can get you some I'll get you the artwork, whatever you need. You just let us know. I'm not sure if that would be a compelling wine brand for something called On Fire, but who knows?
It will be a short run.
It'll be a red wine.
Yes, this will be great. So thanks everybody for listening. If you've been challenged or inspired by what you heard, please rate and review the show. You can also subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode.
If you have any thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you, and you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can hit us up on Instagram or Facebook. We've been getting a lot more texts and voicemails lately, and we try to reply to all of them. If we ever have not replied to you, something got lost in the shuffle, and just ping us again and we will reply. And then also, Mike, one quick announcement that I meant to make at the beginning of this episode, but I forgot, so I'll just make it now, is we recently launched a few of our templates on an Etsy shop. And so you can search us. There's a link on our website, but you can also search for us on Etsy under Friends on Fire. And we've got the expense tracker, net worth tracker, and a mortgage payoff calculator, which is pretty cool, that we just launched. All on Etsy. They are available for a very small fee each of $3. And we just wanted to explain, we originally were offering some of those templates for free, and we decided to put a very small price on them because it takes a lot of work to create those. And quite honestly, it takes a lot of work just to create the podcast. And so we need to do some kind of small efforts to, like I compared to the ice cream shop, to just not lose money on the podcast. So to try to cover some of our cost. So we're excited to have launched those. They're $3 each, available on Etsy. There's links from the relevant show notes, and then you can also find a link from our website directly. And I will mention, though those are for sale, if there's anybody that's in a financial position where they just can't afford even the $3 for that, but they would find a lot of value in having access to that, please email us, because we will make sure to help you and get you whatever you need. And we don't ever want even a $3 charge to be a barrier to you being able to improve your personal finances if it's not something you're able to afford right now. So I think that's a wrap up. I enjoyed this discussion, Mike, and thanks for initiating it.
All right. Thanks, Maggie.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. Bye.
Bye.